4 years of seemingly endless deployments, battles and casualties, the troops increasingly are fighting an invisible enemy in their minds.
I hardly eat. If I'm lucky, I eat one meal a day.
Private Russell Kemry has headaches and can't sleep. He's one of 1,000 troops a month now being treated for combat stress in Iraq.
What are some of the things that we can do to manage stress?
At Baghdad's Camp Stryker, a stress management session. The main question, how many deployments can a marriage last?
Me and my wife have had a lot of problems, so guilt's one of the main ones for me. Depression.
He would call me, and he wasn't the same person. I didn't know who I was talking to.
Despite the fact it has faded into the memory of many under a certain age, the war in Vietnam lives large and unfortunate for still so many. The war in Southeast Asia was the first to bring home the notation PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. And in recent years, we're learning so much more, not only about the affliction itself, but perhaps how well-prepared and ill-prepared we are to deal with what will be a new wave of sufferers following wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Let's welcome into MidPoint a 15-year veteran of the U.S. Air Force Reserves and a PTSD survivor, Captain Dennis Davis. Captain Davis, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Captain Davis, I'm going to go to the New York Times in a recent article and the first paragraph, and this quotes a study from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Most veterans who had persistent post-traumatic stress a decade or more after serving in the Vietnam War have shown surprisingly little improvement since then, and a large percentage have died. That has to hit home with you and so many other veterans because we always thought that they were getting better.
Well, absolutely, it does hit home with me, and I think given the current scandals that we've seen come out of the VA, do we believe a lot of the statistics that come out of there? I would say if they're reporting statistics like that, it's probably far worse than what we're actually being allowed to see and hear. But it definitely resonates with current service members and all those between Vietnam and current day. The resources coming out of Vietnam just weren't there. And today the resources are there, but we're still trained to be strong. The military invented bootstraps, and that's what we're taught to do. And it requires people coming forward and getting the help that is there so that they can get better and they can live a healthy life. They're not broken, they don't need to be fixed, but they are forever changed, and they need to learn to live in that new life.
Let me go back to what you just said. They're not broken and they don't need to be fixed, because many times when we talk about it, those are the words that we hear, that these are men and women who are broken and we have to do what we can to fix them. So why would you say that?
Well, I would say that because it's called post-traumatic stress. It's not called post-military stress, PMSD. It's post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. You cannot go through the things in the military in certain situations and not be affected by that. So they are forever changed, and I don't think anybody would debate that. But it's the trauma that causes the stress, not the military. Now, the military is very good at causing trauma, no doubt about that. But as we'll see in things that I'm working on and other areas of expertise, sexual assault causes the trauma sufficient enough to have PTSD in many sexual assault victims and survivors. A car accident, something like that, a horrific crime, all different types of trauma, abuse can create PTSD. So it's most prevalent in military because of the trauma that we experience in the military, but it's not the military that causes that, and I think that's an important distinction to make, especially when you're looking at broken versus not broken, because we don't consider the sexual assault victim that has PTSD broken. We consider them changed forever, and they need to understand how to live in that new life. And I think the military should be no different.
I want to go back to what you said here, too. You said the military is good at causing trauma. Would that be the worry about what's going to happen when you get home and the care that you will receive? What is that?
I think the causing of the trauma is going to war. Most people that have been to war we're not big fans of war. And that's a misnomer for many, is you join the military, you want to go off to war. Now, you do want to defend your country and fight for freedom, but war is a very ugly thing. And there's trauma involved in that when it's done right. People die, and so that can be very traumatic. I can speak from my own experiences. My post-traumatic stress comes from serving at the mortuary facility at Dover Air Force Base. And in almost 90 days, I saw just under 300 casualties. That changes a person forever. I wasn't being shot at, but I certainly experienced the war. So I think the trauma, again, is what you see depending on your position and job in the military. And that trauma could just as easily be experienced outside of the military.
I had a friend of mine who not long ago sent his son off to service. And I asked the young man, I said, what's the one thing that you fear most? Do you fear being shot? He said, nope, I don't fear being shot. He said, I fear PTSD and coming home a vegetable. And that took me back a moment to think that here's a young man who's already thinking ahead to this point. Is that something that's shared by many people you know, or was this something that strikes you as sort of unique?
I think that because the media and the movies portray veterans and military service members as sometimes loose cannons, ticking time bombs, violent, and we are violent, but the statistics show at more than 22 veterans a day taking their own lives, we're violent towards ourselves. We are still the first people to run into the battle or to the danger while everybody else is running away. But we just choose, we don't want to recreate that trauma in our lives. So it's not shocking that somebody would say that. I think based on what they're seeing in the media and the movies and what the general public's perception, again, of us being broken, we don't want to be broken. We don't need to be fixed. We don't want to be fixed, but we do have to learn to live that life. And I think the other concern is coming back to a system that we see that's failing all around us, that the government made certain promises to us, and that those promises aren't being upheld, and people are dying as a result. And certainly the statistics that you mentioned at the top of the interview with the Vietnam veterans and the New York Times story, those resonate with younger veterans. Well, if they signed up 40 years ago and went off and now they're not being taken care of, what kind of future is there for me when I'm willing to give my life and write that check for my country? And that's frustrating for many.
About 30 seconds I have left. How angry are you right now to read and hear what you hear every day about the VA and about the soldiers who are being left behind?
I think I'm more than angered. I'm saddened, and the lack of leadership, and people work harder to cover up a problem so that they can get bonuses and keep their jobs than help the people that they should be. That's extremely troubling to me, and very saddening for both myself and all of my colleagues that have served this great nation, almost 22 million of us left.
Captain Davis, I want to thank you for being very blunt and very open in your comments. We will stay in touch. We wish you a tremendous amount of luck, and as always, we thank you for your service.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You do the same. Thank you very much. Let us now spin to the Opinionator, and a pleasure to welcome back to MidPoint syndicated talk show host and Hollywood survivor, Sam Sorbo joins us today. Sam, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me. This is a very serious subject. First of all, I'm just going to jump in. It's not PTSD, it's PTS. I discount the D. It's not a disorder. It's completely natural. When you witness the horrific events that happen during war, or when you suffer a rape or some traumatic event, it's completely natural to have a post-stress problem that should be addressed. But here's the big issue. We are not equipping our soldiers with the armor that they need, and that is spiritual armor, because this is a spiritual war. We're sending them in to deal with eternity, and they have no concept of eternity, and we're shackling the wrists of the military advisors that we have, people who understand the Bible, understand as parts of eternity, understand religion and spirituality, and we're silencing them.
Is not as much a part of that, though, is what they get when they come home, because the way these studies look at it, Vietnam veterans are still suffering horribly. Here we have kids, young men, young women coming home now from Iraq, Afghanistan still, and they are going to be suffering this for decades to come. We are looking at a time in our country when we're going to have to spend a tremendous amount of time and money to care for them. And right now, it doesn't seem as if certainly the people in high places, the Veterans Administration, really seem to care.
No, it doesn't. And I think there's a systematic effort. It seems to me that there's a systematic effort to basically discredit the military. We just lost a general overseas in Afghanistan, and barely a peep from the administration about that. It seems to be a disdain for the military, and this effort to silence the religious aspect of the military, both combine to deprive the military of the honor that they deserve. And so when you're over there fighting and you're witnessing horrible things, and then you come back here and you're not honored, you're not respected, it's twofold. It becomes double, I think, the burden that these fine young people have to bear, and it's disgraceful. It's disgraceful from this country. It's disgraceful from a Judeo-Christian nation to do this.
Sam, I got about 30 seconds left. There's a lot of people out there who would just say we become soft.
No, I disagree with that.
And
I
why?
absolutely disagree with that. Our military is not soft.
No. We've become soft. We've become soft too often as a people. We don't realize that there's wars and people need to fight for us occasionally.
Oh, well, that's absolutely true. But I think that we're going to be shown the way pretty soon.
Unfortunately, I tend to think you're right. Sam Sorbo, always a pleasure to have you on as the opinionator. We'll do it again. We'll bring you back in. We'll talk a little bit more about what's happening in the nation and what you're talking about as well.
Thank you so much.
All right, Sam, always a pleasure. Later on this hour, Newsmax editorial director for financial newsletters and money expert Jeff Yasteen checks in with his initial edition of The Moneymaker. And after the break, the one thing our guest says will solve the immigration crisis. And if you listen and look, they will tell you that it is sitting right in front of us, it is easy, and it will make America money. However, granted, I will tell you right now up front, there's a lot of people who will not agree with this in any circumstance. It's coming up next right here on MidPoint, where we question everything